I never planned to tell anyone this story, but what happened that night still haunts me. I never believed in the kind of love that rewrites your entire existence. The kind that makes you question every decision you've ever made, every path you've chosen, every version of yourself you've carefully constructed. I thought those stories were exaggerations, romantic fantasies people told themselves to make sense of their poor choices. Then I met Daniel, and everything I thought I knew crumbled like sand between my fingers. It was a Tuesday in October when he walked into the coffee shop where I worked part-time during grad school. Nothing about that day suggested it would become the demarcation line of my life, before Daniel and after Daniel. The autumn rain had been falling steadily since morning, turning the streets into rivers of amber light reflected from street lamps. The shop smelled of cinnamon and espresso, and I was wiping down the counter for the 100th time, counting down the hours until my shift ended. He shook the rain from his dark hair as he entered, droplets catching the warm light like scattered diamonds. When he smiled at me, really smiled, not the polite grimace most customers offered, something in my chest shifted. His eyes were the color of honey held up to sunlight, and they studied me with an intensity that made me forget the order I'd just taken from the person behind him. "Sorry," I stammered, feeling heat crawl up my neck. "What can I get you?" "Whatever you recommend," he said, his voice carrying a hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. "I trust your judgment." Such a simple statement, but it felt like a challenge and an invitation all at once. I made him my favorite, a cardamom latte with a hint of vanilla, something my grandmother used to make when I visited her in Lebanon as a child. When I handed it to him, our fingers brushed and the contact felt electric, dangerous. "Perfect," he said after the first sip, and I wasn't entirely sure he was talking about the coffee. He came back the next day, and the day after that. And soon I found myself looking toward the door every time the bell chimed, my heart doing this ridiculous leap whenever it was him. We started talking small conversations at first about the weather, about books, about the city, but each conversation peeled back another layer, revealing something deeper underneath. Daniel was a photographer, recently moved from Barcelona, trying to capture what he called the soul of everyday moments. He spoke about light the way poets speak about love, with reverence and obsession. And when he looked at me, I felt like I was one of those moments he wanted to capture, to preserve forever in silver and shadow. For weeks I held back. I had reasons, good ones, I told myself. I was focused on finishing my master's degree in urban planning. I had a 5-year plan. I had just gotten out of a relationship that had left me hollow and hesitant. I didn't have room in my carefully ordered life for someone like Daniel, who seemed to exist outside the boundaries of normal structure, who lived like every day was a photograph waiting to happen. Besides, I'd been hurt before. My last boyfriend Marcus had seemed perfect on paper, stable job, clear goals, wanted the same things I wanted. But perfect on paper doesn't translate to perfect in reality. He'd grown distant, critical, making me feel like I was never quite enough, always requiring some adjustment or improvement. When he finally left, he'd said I was too intense, too emotional, that I felt too much. So I'd built walls, thick ones. I'd decided that protecting myself was more important than taking risks. Love, I'd concluded, was for people braver than me. But Daniel was patient in a way that terrified me. He didn't push, didn't demand. He just kept showing up, kept looking at me like I was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen, kept saying things that made me laugh despite my determination to keep my distance. "You know what I noticed about you?" he said one rainy evening when the shop was nearly empty. "What?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I restocked cups. "You smile with your whole face except your eyes. It's like you're giving everyone 90% but holding back that last 10%, keeping it safe somewhere." My hands froze. Nobody had ever seen me that clearly, and it made me feel naked, exposed. "Maybe I don't trust easily," I said quietly. "Maybe you shouldn't," he replied, "but maybe some people are worth the risk." The moment I gave in happened on a December night, 3 months after we'd met. The city had transformed into something magical, strings of lights draped between buildings, shop windows glowing with warmth against the cold. Daniel had asked if I wanted to see his latest photography exhibition at a small gallery downtown. I almost said no. Saying yes felt like crossing a threshold I couldn't uncross. But something in me was tired of being afraid, tired of playing it safe, tired of that protective shell I'd built around my heart. The gallery was intimate, just one room with exposed brick walls and hardwood floors that creaked with character. But the photographs took my breath away. They weren't the polished, perfect images I'd expected. They were raw, honest moments, a woman laughing with her head thrown back, a child's hand clasped in an elderly person's palm, raindrops on a window with a blurred figure behind it. And then I saw them, a series of photographs labeled The Coffee Shop Chronicles. They were all of me. Me making coffee, concentration etched on my face, me laughing at something a customer said, me looking out the window during a quiet moment, that sadness I thought I hid so well evident in every line of my posture, me caught in a moment of pure, unguarded joy. I hope this isn't creepy, Daniel said softly from behind me. I needed to show you how I see you, how beautiful you are when you think nobody's watching, how much life you carry in you even when you're trying to hold it all back. I turned to face him and there were tears on my cheeks. I hadn't realized I was crying. Why? I asked. Why me? Because, he said, reaching up to gently wipe away a tear, the moment I saw you I recognized something, like calling to like, you're someone who feels everything deeply, who cares so much it hurts sometimes. Someone who's been told that feeling deeply is a weakness when it's actually your greatest strength. I see you, Ryan, all of you. The 90% and that 10% you keep hidden, and I don't want you to change a single thing. That was the moment. The moment I stopped running, stopped hiding, stopped protecting myself from the very thing I needed most. I kissed him in that gallery, surrounded by images of myself I'd never seen before, and it felt like coming home to a place I didn't know I'd been searching for. Loving Daniel was nothing like I'd expected. It wasn't the stable, predictable relationship I'd thought I wanted. It was messy and intense and sometimes scary in its depth. He challenged me constantly, not in the critical way Marcus had, but in a way that made me grow, made me braver, made me more myself. He taught me to see the city differently, to notice the light at golden hour, to find beauty in unexpected places. We'd walk for hours, him with his camera, me with my notebooks, both of us capturing different versions of the same moments. He taught me that plans were good but flexibility was better, that sometimes the best experiences were the unplanned ones. I taught him about structure, about how to build something lasting, about the beauty in commitment and follow-through. He was all spontaneity and inspiration. I helped him channel that into something sustainable. We balanced each other, challenged each other, made each other better. But it wasn't always easy. Loving deeply means hurting deeply, means making yourself vulnerable in ways that can terrify you. We fought about his tendency to disappear into his work for days, about my need for constant reassurance, about the fears we both carried from past relationships. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I'd made a mistake, if I should have kept my walls up, if loving someone this much would inevitably destroy me. But then morning would come and he'd wake up and look at me with those honey-colored eyes, and I'd remember why I'd chosen this. Because real love isn't about protection, it's about choosing someone despite the risk, because they're worth it, because they see all of you and love you anyway, because they make you want to be brave. A year later, we moved in together. My 5-year plan had been adjusted, revised, rewritten to include him in every line. My thesis advisor joked that I seemed lighter, happier, more creative in my work. My friends said I smiled differently now, with my whole face, including my eyes. The moment I gave in to Daniel didn't just change my love life. It changed everything. It changed how I saw myself, how I moved through the world, how I approached risk and fear and vulnerability. It taught me that the walls we build to protect ourselves often end up being the very things that imprison us. I learned that being too emotional, too intense, feeling too much, all the things Marcus had criticized weren't flaws, they were gifts. They were the things that allowed me to love deeply, to create meaningful work, to connect authentically with others. Daniel didn't want me to dial down my intensity. He wanted me to turn it up, to let it shine, to stop apologizing for taking up space in the world. I learned that real love doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to become more fully yourself, to shed the pretense and protection and just be messy and imperfect and gloriously, completely human. These days, when I look back at that version of myself who stood behind the coffee counter, guarded and careful and afraid, I feel tender toward him. He was doing his best with the tools he had. He didn't know yet that the right person wouldn't find his intensity too much. He didn't know that giving in didn't mean giving up. Daniel's latest exhibition features us, both of us this time, photographs of our life together, the mundane and the magical intertwined, me making coffee in our apartment on a Sunday morning, his hands covered in paint from a creative session. Both of us laughing at something ridiculous, a moment of conflict, raw and real, because love isn't always beautiful in conventional ways. And my favorite, us dancing in our living room, no music playing, just two people who found each other and decided to be brave. He titled the exhibition The Moment Everything Changed, and when people ask him about it, he tells them about a coffee shop and autumn rain and a boy who was afraid to feel. And I stand beside him holding his hand, and I'm grateful every single day that I gave in. Because the moment I gave in to him wasn't the moment I lost myself, it was the moment I finally found myself, and that has made all the difference.